So let's start off today's episode by talking about how to get a free iPhone 11 Pro because yes, indeed, right now you can get a free iPhone 11 Pro. Of course, there is one catch to this, so keep this in mind if you're trying to get this deal. But before I talk about the catches that you need to know before trying to get your free iPhone 11 Pro, it is very interesting that a lot of these different cellular companies a lot of different times offer these deals where you can get a phone at a discounted price, or in some scenarios like this one you can pretty much get it for free, which is great to the consumer. And especially in 2020 when a lot of people are probably strapped for money, it is nice they do have this option if they want to utilize this option. Now let's talk about this deal and actually talk about who this applies to and how can you get this deal. So first off, it's only going to be for the iPhone 11 Pro. It's not going to be for the Pro Max, so the bigger version. It is going to be the Pro model. However, the one caveat is you do have to go to T-Mobile and you have to be switching from another carrier. That is the downside to this. So if you like your current carrier and you don't want to switch over, well, unfortunately, this deal is not going to apply to you, and it will also will not apply to people who are already on T-Mobile. So if you're on T-Mobile, you are excluded to this deal. Of course, T-Mobile really wants people to move from another carrier onto their carrier course, and this is pretty much the easiest way for them to get new customers to their service. And then another thing besides you having to move from another carrier over to T-Mobile to get this deal, the biggest caveat here is you do have to pay this phone in full. And then after you pay this phone in full, you will be able to get credits each and every month until the phone is actually paid off. So they're pretty much going to pay you back for this device. And that is kind of a big caveat because, like I said earlier, a lot of people right now just are strapped for money. They don't really have a lot in their pocket, and then for them to do this deal, it really does seem like a dream come true, especially if you're on an older phone. This would be a really nice way for you to get a free phone. If you don't like your carrier or you wanted to switch to T-Mobile, this would be amazing. But just the fact you do have to pay this phone in full, and then they'll pay you back in installments each and every month until the phone is actually paid off, I personally think is asking a little bit too much from the customer. But hey, it is a nice option. Some options are better than nothing. And like I said again, this is actually a free deal. So if somehow you want to take advantage of this deal in the United States with T-Mobile, go ahead and do that. Again, the two criterias are you do have to switch from another carrier to T-Mobile, and then you do have to pay this phone in full, which again, they will pay you back for the phone. So it's not like you bought the phone. Just know you won't get all your money right away for the phone. They'll pay you back in installments, which is kind of interesting. I also think they're doing this deal specifically for Apple so that Apple can try to push the remainder of the iPhone 11s out the door, because as we know right now, the iPhone 12 is literally months away. I think most likely they're going to announce it sometime next month in September, and then maybe an October release date due to this whole pandemic that is going around in the world right now. And what better way to try to get people to get a brand new iPhone 11 instead of just leaving them sit there is by doing this deal. And I think it is a nice deal, but I think a lot of people won't apply to this deal because the limitations are kind of bad, but they're not the worst in the world. And if you can take advantage of this deal right now, I say, hey, go for it, because this phone is still an amazing phone. Even if the iPhone 12s do come out, you are getting one of the best cameras on a smartphone. You're getting some of the best performance. Overall, you're just getting a really solid device, and I don't think anyone's going to complain about this deal if they were to actually take this deal. And honestly, I would jump on the bandwagon if I could jump on the bandwagon for this phone, because this really does seem like an amazing deal for the iPhone 11 Pro. And let's face it, with a lot of premium smartphones, most of the time they are very expensive devices. So to get something pretty much for free is always a pretty nice deal. Now, the next one is actually going to be about the brand new GoPro Hero 9 because it looks like, of course, a brand new GoPro Hero is actually coming to the market. And of course, just like every other year, this should be no surprise because usually how GoPro releases their brand new GoPros, they release them each and every year sometime around September or October, and that's pretty much the release date for these things. They are a yearly device where they release these every year, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know kind of why they would want to do that, seeing that some years it really does seem like a lot of these GoPros don't necessarily need to be made because the enhancements some years are kind of lackluster and kind of don't make sense. But I guess it's kind of like smartphone technology. You look at smartphones that come out each and every year. Sometimes the next smartphone doesn't really add too much to the current gen smartphone. Yes, you're getting better specs and a lot of situations and things like that, but in a lot of different ways you're not really getting a better smartphone because a lot of times the design's the same, the camera's not too much better, it's pretty much the same design. But it's interesting to see that GoPro is back at it again with the GoPro Hero 9. Now, what is going to be new with the GoPro Hero 9? Well, it looks like for the very first time, according to these leaks and rumors, again, these are only leaks and rumors. Every time I talk about rumors and leaks, I do have to make that clear so that you are understanding that these may not be real. But again, usually when I talk about these rumors and speculations, a lot of time the product's too close to release, and most likely it is real information. It's not like made up information. But the biggest thing with the GoPro Hero 9 apparently is going to be that the front screen, because you guys may or may not know, the GoPro has two screens. One screen on the front of the camera to actually see things like your record time, how much battery you have, and things like that. And then on the back of the actual camera, you do have the main display, and that one actually allows you to see what you're actually filming and things like that. But on the front of this brand new GoPro Hero 9, according to these rumors and speculations, it looks like the front display is actually going to be a color display for the first time in GoPro's history. We never seen a front display, I do believe, that has been color. I think they all been black and white as far as I remember. If I'm wrong, I do apologize about that. But yeah, it's going to be a color display, and apparently not just a color display at that. It's also going to allow you to see what you're actually filming, because most of the time when you flip the camera around to do like vlogs and selfies and things like that, you can't actually see what you're recording. So it would be nice to actually see what you're recording, because even though the GoPro's primary function was always to do things like action sports, GoPro is actually realizing a lot of people nowadays are actually not using it as an action camera. What ends up happening a lot of times with the GoPro, they actually use it as a vlogging camera just because it is a very small and portable camera, and on top of that, it is also waterproof, shock resistant, and things like that. So it's easily one of the best cameras out there if you're doing vlogging style stuff, and if you're traveling, going on adventures and things like that. That's where this camera is a really nice camera, and GoPro really does understand that a lot of people are using it for those applications. It all started back with the GoPro Hero 8. The GoPro Hero 8, the previous one that's currently on the market, had some attachments to the GoPro that made it much more closer to like a vlogging camera, because again, GoPro realizes that, yeah, a lot of people are using these as vlogging cameras, and it makes sense. So it is nice that they are realizing that they are using them for vlogging cameras, and they are trying to improve them in every way to make them closer to a good vlogging camera that people can just pick up, use, vlog with, and put them down and be satisfied with them. Is the quality the best? That's really up for debate, of course. These aren't the best cameras in the world, but they're also not the worst cameras in the world. And then outside of the color display that's supposed to be on the front of the GoPro, apparently this one is supposed to support 5K, and I think this would be the first GoPro to support higher resolutions than 4K, because ever since I think the GoPro Hero 4 or 5, they started 4K capability. So it's been a while since they actually, I think, upped the resolution of the actual image, of the actual video capability. So it would be a pretty nice improvement. How much better is it going to be than 4K? Of course, only time will tell. We'll really have to see the image, of course. And I guess even though it is nice, if you think about it, that the camera's going from 4K to 5K, you do have to realize, of course, a lot of people are going to use this as a video camera, that they're going to use the footage for social media websites like YouTube, Facebook, just websites on the internet as in general. And since a lot of people use these for online video creation, of course, the quality of the actual image is going to be downsampled, is going to be rendered and things like that. So of course you're always going to lose quality there, but it is nice, I guess, that you are getting 5K capability if this rumor and speculation is true, just because when you downsample it on like websites like, for instance, YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere else on the internet, that does mean the quality will be slightly better, just because they do have to render it, they do have to make it slightly worse when you upload it. So that's nice that if you were to downsample a 5K video compared to a 4K video being downsampled, that does mean, of course, you should get better picture regardless when you're uploading it. So that's nice. I actually wonder also how the actual GoPro Hero 9 is actually going to work with the 5K video function if it turns out to be real, because I would assume that this may drain a lot of battery shooting 5K. I also want to know how much memory do you need to shoot clips in 5K, because just like 4K does take a lot of memory to actually shoot. So it's going to be interesting if 5K is even practical on this device, going from 4K to 5K. So overall, I'm very interested about this device. I also want to know what the price of this GoPro is going to cost. Is it going to cost more than the GoPro Hero 8, or is it going to cost more? Is it going to cost more than the GoPro Hero 8? Because I can see with some of these additional features, they could slightly charge more for this, or they could potentially just keep it the same. But I think what's going to happen here most likely is, just like every other GoPro they ever made when it comes to their GoPros, usually every year they don't just make one, like for instance GoPro 9, they make like GoPro Hero 9 Silver, Black, they make all these different editions of the current gen GoPro, and that's most likely what's going to happen here. They're not going to make a GoPro Hero 9 Black. They are going to make different versions. And of course, if you do buy a cheaper version of the GoPro Hero 9, most likely you won't get things like the color LCD on the back. You won't get 5K support. You'll get missing features to boot. But hey, it is a nice option. They are trying to tailor the GoPros to individuals of every different price point who maybe can afford a GoPro Hero 9 or a GoPro Hero Black to begin with, because the GoPro Hero Blacks were always pretty expensive for what they are. Sure, they're pretty convenient and pretty practical devices for vlogging and just for video capturing, but a lot of times they're just too expensive for what they are, and a lot of people aren't happy with the prices. But I guess they know about that. That's why they actually make different price points for their GoPros. Now it looks like Sony is going to be back in the game again, and they're going to be making a new Xperia 5 II, and this one looks like the Xperia 5 II from Sony is going to be the first Sony smartphone to actually implement a 120 hertz screen. Now, of course, when it comes to smartphone technology or mobile technology, of course, a lot of smartphones nowadays have higher refresh rates than 60 frames per second. It's nothing new, but it is nice. Sony is finally stepping their game up by actually making higher screens with higher refresh rates above 60 frames per second. So that is great. It really does seem like nowadays it's always about the race to see how fast can you make your smartphone display, and how much better can you make it outside of 60 frames per second or 60 hertz, because for the longest time, pretty much forever since smartphone technology's been around, we've had screens that were only 60 hertz, but now companies are realizing, yeah, that may not be too good, especially when you're paying this premium money, and we want the best experience for our customers, of course. So we're going to make things like 90 hertz displays, 120 hertz displays, 140 hertz displays, and that is nice for the consumer. But it is interesting that nowadays I see it more so that the race to higher refresh rate is more important than something like the quality of the screen or the resolution of the screen. It kind of feels like with modern day technology, we kind of hit a brick wall when it comes to resolution of the actual screens. Most smartphone screens nowadays are either at the low end 1080p screens, which are pretty good considering smartphones to begin with are very small devices, so 1080p is still very fine. But then you have smartphones on the high end nowadays have 2K screens or 1440p screens, and for the longest time, even for like the last 6-7 years, a lot of smartphones have had 1440p screens or 2K screens, and they really haven't went above that. I don't know what their thinking is. Is it because battery life may take a hit when it comes to higher resolutions, or is 2K 1440p enough for most people? And with these devices as small as they are, it's like it doesn't even matter. Honestly, at this moment, I would personally want to see them do things like 4K or 5K screens. I know Sony in the past has made a smartphone with a higher resolution screen than 2K or 1440p. They actually pushed the limits to 4K, and I think they're one of the few smartphone manufacturers to actually manufacture a smartphone to have a 4K screen. Obviously, that's not really necessary, so I guess it is nice that companies are focusing on the refresh rate of the actual screen, because the screen refresh rate is the most important thing. For a lot of people, you may not notice the higher refresh rate, but where it really does impact your smartphone is going to be the longevity of your smartphone. I do believe, in my opinion, wholeheartedly, if you keep your smartphone for like 3, 4, 5 years, like some people do, and you guys know when your smartphone ages, when you update your apps, when you update the operating system, in a lot of scenarios and in a lot of cases, I've seen it to where your smartphone starts to get laggy, it starts to slow down. It's just not as good as it once been when your smartphone was brand new. So by having this higher refresh rate screen, that should mean in the long run, a lot of devices that would normally get laggy over time, they shouldn't get as laggy. Not to say that they can't get laggy or will never get laggy, but they should get laggy less, just because they have a higher refresh rate. So it should compensate for the fact that your operating system is newer, you're updating your apps, maybe the battery's getting weaker, so that should mean you should have a longer lasting device as a whole. Granted, by the time you ditch your smartphone, it shouldn't be that big of a deal, because technically these companies want you to upgrade every single year or every other year to get a brand new smartphone. But for those people who do decide to don't upgrade their smartphone for 3, 4, 5 years, they should actually get a pretty good solid experience when it comes to their smartphones. Now, the next one on my list is actually about a project, because it looks like a person actually made a Game Boy Color into a Wii. They pretty much put a Wii inside of a Game Boy Color. Of course, some sacrifices had to be made. Like, for instance, the biggest one would be the fact that it doesn't have a disk drive, just like an original Wii. But of course, that makes sense. You're not going to have a disk drive to be bringing around with you. The reason I want to talk about this in the first place is due to the fact that I really do think that these are some amazing devices. Anytime someone makes their own project, I really do think it is pretty amazing how a lot of people are very smart and smart enough to go ahead and make a project just like this. Who would imagine the day where somebody would put a full, complete, pretty much Wii inside the body of a Game Boy Color? Because obviously the Wii is much more bigger than the original Game Boy Color, but to fit a whole Wii inside of a Game Boy Color and to be playing Wii type games on a Game Boy Color looking device is actually pretty amazing, and honestly pretty mind-blowing if you think about it. If you were to ask somebody, let's say maybe when the Game Boy Color was around, could the Game Boy Color be like a GameCube or like a Wii, they would probably say no, that's probably not possible. It just shows you how passionate people are for their favorite brand. And then on top of that, it really does show you how smart humans are and what they are capable as a whole. And it is pretty cool. And it looks like from this picture, it looks like the Game Boy Color not only mimics the Wii, but you can actually use a Wiimote. It looks like they took the sensor from the Wiimote and from the Wii and actually crammed it into this Game Boy Color as well. I mean, it's probably not too hard, but it did probably take some time. The nice thing I love about this design, just like this article is actually stating, I actually love the fact that this person actually made this Wii very clean. At least this Game Boy Color version of the Wii, it's very clean. They're going with the white aesthetic, and of course, when the original Wii launched in America, the very first color was white, and most people own the white one, so they're staying true to the Wii design by having a white Wii. Now, it does say Wii Boy Color on it, and the color name is actually in different colors. So the color logo has C in like pink, O in blue, L in green, O in, I think, orange or brown, and then R's in another blue. So they are doing that, and it is interesting. They're going with Wii Boy Color. I'm not actually, to be honest, too big of a fan of this name. I don't think they should have called it Wii Boy Color. It's just a little too much in my opinion, but I mean, hey, I'm not to say. And plus, I don't really know what I would call this thing if I was to actually call this thing. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. And it is really cool they are using Wii hardware just because Wii can actually emulate a lot of different consoles. So it is cool, even though this is a Wii technically, or it can actually emulate things like the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. So you kind of have this all-in-one device that plays like Wii games, but can also play handheld games, play other systems, even play a GameCube, because let's face it, the Wii is pretty much running on the same hardware that the GameCube was actually running on. It's just been overclocked, and it has a sensor on it for the Wiimote. So overall, a pretty cool thing that this guy did it. And it's not the first time someone did this. If you go to YouTube and you type in like handhelds for any system, people have already done that. I've even seen like a PS3 handheld, which blew my mind. I've seen a GameCube handheld, an N64 handheld. I even seen some handhelds where they actually keep the functionality of the actual system. They go a step above. They don't just actually port all this stuff, all the hardware into the next system. They actually, in some scenarios, specifically the ones where they allow you to use cartridges, they allow you to actually put the cartridge in the back. Like when I first seen the N64 portable someone made, they actually had it to where when you flip it over, you put the N64 cart on it. But of course, obviously with disc-based systems, it's not practical to be carrying something around with a disc on it. You would have to swap discs if you want a new game. And then on top of that, how well would it perform with a disc in it? It may skip, and then you may, of course, lose things like, for instance, battery life. Battery life may take a hit if you had access to a disk drive, so obviously that won't be practical. But with things like modding and hacking, you can just put all your games on like a big SD card or a flash drive inside, and you're good to go for all your gaming needs. But overall, very cool with this Wii Boy color system. This Wii Boy color system is very accurate and pretty similar to the original Game Boy Color, outside, of course, of the color scheme of this thing, and then outside of the fact that it does have dual analog sticks. But of course it needs dual analog sticks since we're talking about Wii games, and not just Wii games, but GameCube games. If you wanted to play those, you will need some kind of stick setup, unlike a Game Boy Color, which all the games used a D-pad. Overall, very good work. The one thing about this that looks slightly different is obviously, or of course, the screen is slightly bigger. But of course, a lot of these Wii games are actual console games, so of course you got to make a slightly bigger screen for these games that are a little bit higher resolution. You'd want a higher or a bigger screen in a lot of this situations. Now, the next one is actually about Fortnite. Now, I didn't really talk too much about this whole Fortnite, Epic, and Apple problem, because, of course, they're having a big battle now with Apple not really supporting Epic. Epic pretty much violating all the all the terms of the Apple App Store. I'm not going to really get into all of that, but it looks like Apple is still putting their foot down, and they're pretty much putting the ban hammer on Epic. It's getting so bad now that a new report came out that did state that if you don't have Fortnite on your Apple device, you're pretty much out of luck. Before, even when this whole ban situation actually came to be, where they banned Fortnite off of the App Store, believe it or not, if you didn't have Fortnite installed, but you previously deleted it, you could actually go to the App Store and actually re-download it if you downloaded it before. But it looks like now, if you haven't downloaded it to your device and you deleted it, it looks like there is no way to go to the App Store and actually find it. It looks like they are just removing it from the App Store altogether, regardless of if you downloaded it before and deleted it. It's not their problem. They really just want to show that, yeah, Epic violated our terms, and that's what you get for violating our terms. But anyway, it's not like if you have Fortnite right now, it's a win-win situation, because it's still not a win-win situation for you, just due to the fact that if you actually think about it, Apple actually did lock out Fortnite updates. So even if you have it downloaded on your device, it's kind of like, well, it's cool, it works, but we're going to be missing content in the future because we're not getting the brand new seasons, and we're not getting patches, we're not getting updates. So it's kind of like, why would you even play it at this point, even if you have it installed? Because it's like, well, it's kind of pointless and it's kind of useless to you, when you're better off, of course, playing it on another device or another system that has access to it, because this game is almost to the point to where it's kind of useless to you. I'm actually surprised at this point how Apple is actually taking this whole thing very serious. I'm surprised they didn't block this game altogether. I thought by now, since all this stuff has come out about how they're blocking updates, how they're blocking it from the store, they won't let you re-download it if you deleted it, I thought by now Apple would be like, yeah, we're going to go another step and not even allow you to actually activate the game or turn on the game when you click on the app. Will they do that in the future? Honestly, I'm not going to hold my breath on this, because anything is possible at the very moment. And I can see a situation where Apple's like, yeah, we're pretty mad. Let's go ahead and take it another step further by not even allowing people to actually access the game at all, regardless if you have it installed or not. It's just not going to work. Now, the next one on my list is actually about Twitch, because it looks like Twitch's September is back. And if you don't know anything about Twitch September, if you're not really into Twitch or big on Twitch, basically what September is, it'll allow you to actually sub to your favorite Twitch channel at a discounted price. And this is not the first time Twitch has done something like this for September. They've been doing this for like the past 4 or 5 years. So it is pretty nice that they are doing this, especially they're keeping this up. And I'm glad they're keeping this up, just because it is 2020, and 2020 is a pandemic year, and there is a lot going on, and a lot of people's lives are impacted with what's going on, and a lot of people honestly may be strapped to money. So it is nice they are doing September. So when you sub to your favorite content creator on Twitch, you will be getting a pretty good discount. I think it's 20% off. Here's how it works. So it's 20% off the first month of a new monthly subscription, 25% off the first 3 months of a new quarterly subscription, and 30% off the first 6 months of a new biannual subscription. So it is nice they are doing this, because a lot of people maybe don't have the chance to subscribe to their favorite content creator because it's a little bit too expensive. And then on the other side, their favorite content creator may be struggling since they're not getting the same pay they would get otherwise, just because, again, it all boils down to this pandemic, and a lot of people, again, are strapped for money. And the nice thing about September, even though these subs are going to be on at pretty nice discount if you do subscribe to somebody you like on Twitch, the nice thing is here, they do get the full amount, or the regular amount anyway, they would get if you subscribe for the usual $4.99, or I think on mobile it's slightly higher, it's $5.99, so it is nice. They're not like, yeah, we'll give you a discount on subscribing to somebody, but they'll get the discounted price as well, so they're not going to get the full amount they would normally get. Nope, it is nice. Twitch and Amazon are like, yeah, we'll be nice, and we'll still give them the same amount that they got normally. Now, the next one on my list is actually about OnePlus, because it looks like OnePlus is not done. You guys know OnePlus made the brand new OnePlus Nord this year, and the OnePlus Nord is a phenomenal phone for what it is. Is it the best budget phone of 2020? In my opinion, I don't think it's the best budget phone of 2020, sadly, even though it is a nice phone. For me personally, I would still go with the Google 4A. I think the 4A from Google is an amazing phone. It's priced correctly at $350. Another problem with the OnePlus Nord, the OnePlus Nord is only in select markets. I know for a factor that phone is not even in America, and for a lot of people, they don't want to pay import fees if you were to get it online and try to import it from another country. It's just too much of a hassle to get it. But anyway, it looks like OnePlus is back at it again, and this time they're making an even cheaper phone than the OnePlus Nord. This one is going to cost $200, 200 US dollars. You heard me correctly. And this one's going to be called the OnePlus Clover. I don't know if that's the final name of this phone or what the case is, but it is going to be called the OnePlus Clover phone. And the crazy thing about the OnePlus Clover phone is the fact that, get this, this is going to be a smartphone with an absolute monster of a battery. And this is not even an overstatement. This is the truth. It's going to ship with a 6,000 milliamp battery, and that's even bigger than a lot of flagships on the market today. You look at things like, for instance, the iPhone, the Samsung phones of the world, the LG phones of the phone. You look at all these premium smartphones, and they don't even rock batteries this big. So that's absolutely crazy that this phone's only $200 with a 6,000 milliamp battery. But the downside is, even though this has a crazy battery, you are going to be skimping out on a lot of different aspects of this smartphone. Like, for instance, the display on this smartphone is actually pretty bad. It's only going to be 720p, and it's only going to be an IPS LCD display. If you were to pay $350, you would get a 1080p OLED display from the Google Pixel 4a. So you can see that's the trade-off you have to get. But on the other hand, even though this is only rocking a 720p display, it's not a big deal at all, because you have that crazy 6,000 milliamp battery paired with that 720p screen. You're going to be getting battery for days. And again, that's not even an overstatement. That is the truth. But then again, it will look kind of grainy, of course. 720p in today's world is not good. I would at least like to see this thing have a 1080p display. Even with a 1080p display, I think 6,000 milliamps still would have been amazing for this phone. But I mean, they do have to cut back somewhere since it's only $200. They can't give you the world, and they do have to make sacrifices, of course. And then, of course, another sacrifice is going to be the RAM. It's only going to ship with 4 gig of RAM instead of your typical 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going to be 4 gig. But I think for a lot of people, 4 gig is still going to be good in today's world. It looks like it's also shipping with a really low Snapdragon. So it looks like it's going to be shipping with the Snapdragon 460, it looks like. Or it may actually be the Snapdragon 660, so it's very interesting in this article. It has 2 different Snapdragons. One's the 460, and then one's the 660. I think it actually might be the 660, but either way, you are getting a pretty just okay Snapdragon processor in this. You're not really getting anything too crazy. On the upside, you are getting a rear fingerprint sensor, which I am a big fan of physical fingerprint sensors. I'm not really a fan of ones that are under the display, just because a lot of time in my experiences, they just don't work that well, and they're just bad in general. I don't like them at all unless they can figure out a way to make under the display fingerprint sensors work with the whole display instead of one single area. I'm a big fan of physical ones. And then on top of that, you will get a micro SD card slot, which is pretty nice since I know a lot of flagships nowadays aren't even including a micro SD card slot. So it is nice. You do get expandable memory. And then one thing you do get is still a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. That really does seem like that's one area where a lot of these mid-range to cheap smartphones still want to actually give you. They still want to give you a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. It's kind of a shame that you have to go to the bottom of the barrel or mid-tier if you want a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. You would think paying more money for your smartphone would actually mean you'd get more for your money, but it's just not the case. You do get a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack here. Overall, it seems like a pretty okay phone. It's not going to blow your socks off, especially the display there and also the performance there. But if you need a phone that's going to be reliable and it's going to last you for days on end, I'm telling you, this phone is going to be the phone for you. One, it's only $200. And then also it does have a 6,000 milliamp battery. That's really the only thing that really makes this phone stand out from the crowd, is the fact that it's $200, but it has that crazy 6,000 milliamp battery. Honestly, if it didn't have a 6,000 milliamp battery, I would probably still argue, yeah, you're probably better off going to the Google Pixel 4a, not just because I'm a fanboy of the 4a and I think it's a good phone for what it is. Honestly, I think it's still a better phone. You're getting a much more better camera. You're also getting a better display. You're also going to be getting more updates for the phone. You're getting, I think, a better processor as well. Overall, it's just a better smartphone, and it's not like you're paying much more for that smartphone because you're going from $200 all the way up to $350, and I think at $350 most people would probably say, yeah, that's still a pretty good deal. It's not asking the world, and you are getting some pretty amazing stuff for $350. We'll have to wait and see when this thing actually comes out, and it looks like I did make a mistake here. It's actually going to be the Snapdragon 460, but of course it's only $200, so they have to give you pretty much the bottom of the barrel almost with this processor, so it is what it is, but take that in consideration. Overall, I guess not too bad, and pretty surprised that they decided to go with another budget smartphone. It really does seem like there's no point nowadays for OnePlus to actually go to the higher end with like the OnePlus 8 or 9 that they currently actually have on the market. It probably seems like they're better off playing in that mid-range to cheap smartphone type of deal, because that's what OnePlus was always known for. When they first came out, they were always about how can we make a pretty good, confident smartphone at the lower end and not try to break the bank and still give you a quality smartphone. And it does seem like today, in today's world, when they try to make a OnePlus that's actually really high-end phone, just like Google, it kind of seems like they don't know what they're doing. They can't really compete with things like, for instance, Apple or Samsung with their premium smartphones. It's kind of like, why do those phones even exist from Google and OnePlus that are reaching close to $1,000? It's kind of like, well, I don't understand, and they're better off competing at the lower end because there's not a lot of competition, and it seems like how their smartphones are made and what kind of stuff they give you with the smartphone, it really does seem like this smartphone is just overall, their smartphones overall are just made for that mid-range to like cheap smartphone market that they've been playing with for a while, or that they started with to begin with. And then the last one on today's episode is actually going to be about the brand new Ratchet and Clank. It looks like that is going to be a launch game for the upcoming PS5, and the game's going to be called, of course, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. We've seen it in the PS5 reveal when they revealed all the games, so this isn't new news, but there is some stuff interesting about this game. The one big interesting thing about this game, besides it being a launch title for the PS5, is just like some PS4 Pro games and Xbox One X games this generation. Of course, PC games have already had this for the longest time, so this is not new news if you're on PC. But for game consoles, it's quite new. I know one game Uh, God of War, I think 2018 back on the PS4 had this. If you were on the PS4 Pro, basically what they're going to do is they're going to have options for different performance for the game. Like for instance, if you want to play this game at 4K 30, you can do that. Or if you want a 60 frames per second experience, you can do that, but at the cost of resolution. It's not going to be a 4K game. The devs already confirmed they're putting those options in, and honestly, I'm very happy about this. And I know some people out there in the industry aren't too actually happy about this, because it's kind of like, why would we want game consoles to be more like PCs? Doesn't it just make game consoles a little bit more confusing and hard to understand, especially when a lot of people who play game consoles may not understand how these features work? Yeah, that is true, but for people like me who understand PC hardware and understand all those different options, it is nice to have these options. Now, as far as I'm aware, the devs behind Ratchet and Clank didn't actually state how many options they're going to give you, how many sliders or anything like that. They may just give you two modes, resolution and frame rate, so you can toggle one or another. And it is cool they are giving you the options, because a lot of times a lot of people may be okay with having crazy fidelity in their game like 4K and being okay with things like 30, because 30 frames per second nowadays is kind of low, but it's not like a game's not stable and not playable at 30. As long as it's a locked 30, I'm okay actually with 30. And it also depends on what type of game I'm playing. Am I playing a very action oriented game that's single player? Or am I playing a game that's multiplayer, that's very fast paced? It's a shooting game or a racing game. That'll determine how I actually want to do this. So it is pretty awesome they're giving you these features. And I know not everyone's going to agree on their options, but I am glad you're not forced to play that bad frame rate if you don't want to, because a lot of people don't like bad frame rate. And I am glad they are giving each individual an option here, because what I will say about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, this game looks phenomenal. Yes, I said it here. It does look phenomenal. I think they really do a good job of really showing you how ray tracing actually works as an actual new thing in the gaming industry. And even with the new graphics cards on the market, I think the 2000 series, they've had ray tracing for a little while now, but it's been kind of gimmicky. It really wasn't used to its full potential. I am glad now with the PS5 and the next Xbox, the Xbox Series X specifically, that they are going to be utilizing ray tracing to its full effect. And it looks like Ratchet and Clank, from what I'm seeing, really does utilize ray tracing a lot. When you look at shadows on different objects, shadows on the ground, just shadows everywhere, it really does look like an amazing game. You pair that with 4K. Now, I can't confirm if this game runs at native 4K or does it run at checkerboard upscaled 4K. I would assume at this point it probably runs at native 4K. They have to give you a reason to want this system over things like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Series X. They want to make you really feel like you're playing a next-gen game. This game honestly looks so good. It reminds me of pretty much just playing a Pixar movie in the palm of my hands, really, with a game controller. If you haven't seen this trailer, I highly recommend watching this Rift Apart Ratchet and Clank trailer, but of course you would be doing yourself disservice if you actually watched it in 1080p or 2K resolution. Try to watch this in 4K if you can. Of course, even watching it in 4K will be kind of a disservice, because obviously, of course, when you play this on your home TV, when you get a PS5, it's going to look slightly crispier. It's not going to look much more better, but it is going to look slightly crispier because you have that compression from online. It has to go through your internet connection. They had to record it through like a capture card, so it may lose some fidelity there. But just what I've seen from this game, it looks like an amazing game. And I am a Ratchet and Clank fan, so if I did get the PS5, this would honestly be one of my first purchases for the PS5. And I'm actually glad this is a launch game for the PS5, because Ratchet and Clank is now a staple of Sony. Is it the biggest Sony franchise? No, it's not the biggest Sony franchise, but it is one of Sony's best franchises. I'll give it that. And I am a big Ratchet and Clank fan. And this game looks like it's going to live up to the Ratchet and Clank name. And on top of that, it's going to live up to next-gen hype. It really looks like it's going to be one heck of a game when this game actually comes out. And yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for today's video. Anyway, guys,